Stepping back now 50 years, 20th century's over. I believe the great struggle of the 20th century was between the Soviet Union and the United States, between the free world and communism.
Absolutely.
What was Joe McCarthy's ultimate contribution in that struggle?
Well, I think he hosed out the Augean stables. He actually blew a lot of these people away. I mean, he got them out of there. And the whole Amerasia thing was another group called the Institute of Pacific Relations. It was really a nest of Stalinists, communists who was crawling all over the place, interlocked with the State Department. There were 15 or so of those people in the State Department. McCarthy got most of them out. And really, I think he contributed strongly to the sea change politically that happened when Eisenhower was elected. Not that Eisenhower needed McCarthy, but there were shifts going on. And one of the things that historically had been true was that the Roman Catholic population in the country had been voting Democratic. Well, McCarthy was a big hero. He was a Roman Catholic, and he got smeared for that, as I think you know from reading the J.B. Matthews chapter. He was anti-Catholic bigotry was used against him very consciously by these left-wing ideologues, Drew Pearson, the columnist, to some degree by elements in the White House, preyed upon the anti-Catholic sentiment to stir up resistance to McCarthy. Real vicious bigotry was used against him. He was nonetheless a hero, for the same reason that they were against him, to many Catholics, and particularly in a place like Massachusetts, which now we think of as a bastion of liberalism. John Kennedy, who got elected in 52, was a big friend of Joe McCarthy, and that's a whole other dimension, the Kennedy connection of Joe McCarthy, which is just so anomalous it's hard to, people probably find it hard to believe. But Robert Kennedy went to work for Joe McCarthy. It was his first job after he got out, or pretty close to his first job after he got out of law school. So that was all played together. But anyway, that helped, although in Kennedy's case, McCarthy stayed out and Kennedy won over Henry Cabot Lodge. But elsewhere, the Roman Catholic population was much more open to voting for Republicans. And that's a huge factor in what happened politically down the road in other elections that have happened since.
Well, what other things, Stan? You mentioned that even some conservatives now will say that's McCarthyism of the left or whatever. It strikes me in reading your book that there is a methodology that was used against Joe McCarthy that is used still today.
You're correct. You're correct. It's a pretty standard routine. You can see used over and over again. Following Joe McCarthy, I guess the most flagrant example was what they tried to do to Barry Goldwater in 1964, the demonization of Goldwater. Now, there's been a revaluation of Goldwater since, and people are kinder to Goldwater now, and they found out he had somewhat liberal social issue views, which were not salient in nobody thought about that in 64, but now the liberals say, oh, you mean he was for abortion? Well, you must have been okay. So, but they didn't say that then, and of course that was not an issue in 1964. If you go back and look at the things they said about Barry Goldwater, who, by the way, was a big supporter of Joe McCarthy, in fact, I think Barry Goldwater in some ways was the lineal descendant of Joe McCarthy, more than he was of Bob Taft. Goldwater was much more like McCarthy than he was like Taft, as we know. Barry is a kind of a freewheeling type guy. But anyway, so they did it. Then fast forward to the 80s, what they did to Dan Quayle, and what they've been doing recently to George Bush. It's the same drill. This demonization of these political leaders, I'm no big defender of President Bush. But the stuff that they say is just preposterous, and even more, I guess, the figure today that is most like McCarthy in their demonology is Dick Cheney. Cheney is the new McCarthy, and they treat him they try to do to him just what they did to McCarthy.
One thing that's